Hangout, the show where we talk about digital marketing news we found interesting this week and hang out with experts we find fascinating. Today, I'm Steve Farnsworth, the host, and joining me is my ever-angelic Adam Helway.
Angelic this time. That's even beating out the effervescent or whatever else you've said before.
I think effervescent was it. You can catch the show every week live here on Fridays at 11 a.m. Pacific time, or by going to the FridayHangout.com. You can catch the recorded show on YouTube or our podcast on Spreaker and iTunes. Today we're talking about persona buyers and why should you care, and our guest today is Jason Keith. Thank you so much for coming. He's the CEO and founder of Social Fresh.
Thanks for having me, guys. Glad to be here. Thanks for the invite.
Yeah, now we just talked for a moment about kind of you have kind of a new focus right now. Thing has been kind of taking up your time, your brain space. Share a little bit about that. Why we're talking about personas today.
Yeah, well, over the last 12 to 18 months, Social Fresh has really gone through a transition of, instead of just producing great content and building content and products for whoever comes to us, we're focusing more and more on really defining who those personas are. And there's a few of them for us. We have small business customer, we have an agency customer, we have a medium brand, mid-tier brand customer, and then we have a big brand customer. So those are kind of our four personas. A couple of them could be merged together in certain situations, but we're trying to be more intelligent about how to find those people, which of those groups is a better customer for us, and we're also looking to figure out, what are the specific needs of those customers in the way that we attract them, pull them through our funnel, kind of build a relationship with them, and then, try to convert them into a paying customer, whether our physical events or through our online products. So we're trying to really be more intelligent about how they spend their time online, what email marketing they want, what training products, education they need, and where they like to be marketed to, whether it's email or social or advertising, etc.
A lot of people are familiar with, at least I'm most familiar with you with your events. You have your great Social Fresh events all over the U.S., maybe likely beyond that, because you've expanded, very quickly, and have been known for having quality events. So you kind of mentioned that part of your marketing or outreach or touch points for these customers, these different personas, the events are part of them. How does that factor into what you're doing? How do you factor your events into sort of lead generation for your company?
Yeah, so the event for us is really it's two things for us. It's our main product, so it's our main revenue channel. It represents probably about 75% of our revenue to date. And we're trying to, on a side note, we're trying to make it, we always want to grow that, of course, right? But we also want the online component to become kind of on a more even playing field. So we have, diversified revenue channels.
One takes a heck of a lot more effort than the other, I guess, right? To get people in the same room and everything.
They're two completely different animals, and we started out with events, so I'm actually much more comfortable with event marketing and event planning and all that than I am with online, although we're making a lot of strides with our online products and marketing. And the second thing the events do for us is they're also kind of our biggest marketing channel. And we only do 2 conferences a year right now. We've done more in the past. We did 7 in 2010. We've done 15 events total. But now we're doing 2 a year, and we're focusing on making those 2 really great, making them national events, even international events, because we have people coming actually from outside the country right now. Not en masse yet, but a few here and there. So what these 2 big events allow us to do as national events and bigger speakers and great attendees is they become these beacons twice a year that a lot of attention is gathered upon. We get a lot of content out of it that we can parlay throughout the year, and we get to partner with great speakers and attendees that become champions because of these great experiences that we have. So there's many ways how it works, but they're also kind of a big marketing channel for us as well. So the best I can do is make them bigger and better. Well, not bigger as in more people, although we want a few more people, but bigger as in more successful experience for people, more educational content for people, more entertaining experience, better networking. The better we can make the events, the better of a marketing result we get out of them. So that's a big focus for us always.
Well, let's dig down a little bit and talking about personas. Talk about how you're building those personas. What's your process you're going through to help identify and then verify those?
Yeah, it's a lot of research. So, we've done a lot of events, like I said, so we can go back and dig through all of the event registration data, all the sales data that we have.
What data are you looking for in that? When you go through that data, what kinds of stuff are you looking for?
Yeah, so I'm looking for trends, right? So I'm looking for we have a range of ticket prices, for instance. So you can buy early and pay about $400 to a $10 event, and you can buy late and spend up to $750 for regular ticket or $1,300 for VIP ticket. So I'm looking. We have a pretty dependable small business customer that's always been there for us because small business is such a large audience that we have really gotten to know that customer very well. Now we're looking for agency, medium, and big brand customers and trying to figure out trends within the people that are spending more money. So people that are willing to drop $750 or $1,300 a month out from our event, 2 weeks out from our event, because they have a budget for it. We want to find trends within that buying pattern that allows us to better target those customers better in the future, right? And we've, without giving away too much stuff, one of the things we've realized is that we can target those customers with Facebook ads really well, according to other companies that they might spend that same type of money with. So, for instance, if they're spending money on ExactTarget, big email marketing company that's pretty expensive, and they're a fan of them, and we can use other ways to kind of refine that targeting. We can really get good results and find people that have the budget to spend that money late in the buying cycle for our events, and that's really helpful for us to get the right people at our events, the right people that have budget. They're going to be attractive to our sponsors, that are going to be savvy enough to really benefit from our advanced content.
Can you share, like, without giving away the story, can you share a little something maybe you learned about those customers and kind of how you got that?
Yeah, I mean, it all comes down to a lot of it marketing software. So a lot of times we're looking, and it sounds really simple after we've gone through the process, but when we find people that are connected to medium to higher level priced enterprise marketing software, we find more refined customers, savvier customers, and customers with a deeper wallet, simply. And I wish I could have had that aha moment from day one. But there also weren't as many tools, 3 or 4 years ago when we started these events, 4 years ago, to find these types of people. I may have known that HubSpot existed back then, or Marketo, or ExactTarget, but I didn't have an easy way to find them. And now these companies are doing better about attracting their fans socially, making kind of their customer database more public in some ways. So it's easier to kind of attract those customers because of that.
Actually, that's interesting. It makes a lot of sense that you would find people who would attend your events, even though they may be small businesses, being more connected with, or small or medium businesses, more connected with more of behaviors that show more marketing maturity.
Yeah, well, it makes a lot of sense when you think through it, like I said. And even if you have a small business owner who's not going to spend money on a marketing automation software, on email software, on a social media dashboard, if you get into an enterprise company, you can have 7 or 8 marketing software companies that you spend money on. Small businesses don't have that, but what they do is they follow them, and the savvier they are, the savvier the company they're connected to online.
So I'm sorry, Adam, did you have a question?
No, I was just going to say, so that sort of correlates with not necessarily only budget or buying power, but sort of social and digital marketing acuity or yes, awareness, right?
Yeah, it does in a lot of ways. You're always going to have people that are smart on their own accord, have been researching the industry, researching social marketing, and they're typically going to find us. But for us to find, there's a large amount of people that don't know about Social Fresh, that do know about email, advanced email marketing, that do know about advanced marketing automation software, that do know about what they want to do to connect their CRM to their social media dashboard. And they have these challenges, and they're researching them all the time. And if we can, become a part of that conversation, it really helps us.
That's interesting. Is there a couple, if you're a mid-sized company, from this process, is there some tips that you could give about how to kind of go about the process of verifying your personas? Yeah,
I think the biggest thing you can do is Facebook advertising.
Just test that.
You don't have to spend a lot of money, and what you do is you create target audiences that you run your ads against, and you do a lot of them, and you do small tests over, a series of 3 to 7 days, and you do demographic tests, targeting and demographic tests, and you see which ones perform, and you give them a real ask, whether it's sign up to our newsletter about this topic that we want to eventually sell you a product based on, or whether it's an actual product like attending an event or buying a training product, which would be ours, or buying a real product, or becoming an agency customer of some sort, right? There's all kinds of products you could push them, but make sure it's a real asset that's relevant to a potential customer, and test them. We've done that same thing. So you would make certain assumptions, like if we ran Facebook ads for Social Fresh to fans of Mashable, right? Mashable, biggest social media blog out there. It's much more now of maybe an entertainment site. They're trying to become maybe more like BuzzFeed, etc. They've done a really good job at adapting. You may have thought a couple years ago that fans of Mashable would be a good target for us. They've never been a good target for us because it is such a more of an entertainment site. At first look, you might think that might be something we want to target. Even if we target the fans of the speakers that we have, that's not always a good idea for us either. But if we get really minute about the types of companies people interact with online, and we test, email marketing, and we test social media dashboards, and we test all kinds of things like that, we can make assumptions on what software they're using, what type of training they're looking to from these companies, and then watch the data as they convert or don't convert.
Do you ever triangulate that data in the terms of, like, you talk about using one of these kinds of offers? Do you try multiple offers when you're testing an ad, and then kind of see if there's a match of titles, or do you tend to pick one set of offers to test?
What we do, we've done that a little bit. Yeah, we could probably do more of it, and I think there's probably an infinite number of things you could do with that by matching the data in different ways. We're looking at SumAll, which is a new analytics app that allows you to kind of align some of those things, but not get too granular. But one thing we can do is we can go in and look at who bought tickets from what source, and what companies are they at, what titles do they have, when did they buy, what geography are they, et cetera. And we can gain a lot of insights from that, for sure. And we do that in a lot of the situations. But we can, honestly, there's so much of it you could do. We try to focus on what we can use to better target future customers. And a lot of times that is that comes down to companies that they work at, more or less. That's the biggest thing that we look for.
Adam, did you have something?
I was going to say, we've talked a lot about regarding, what you get from. I like how you sort of discussed intentionally segmenting the tickets at your event, for instance, and of course, obviously, there's reasons at the event you don't just simply say we're going to charge more for the same ticket, but you can get some signals from that, and then also some signals from these experimental and sort of iterative Facebook ads that you're doing and everything as well, and seeing buying patterns and sort of social savviness, as you were calling it. Beyond that, what other data do you sort of put into personas? And I say this from my experience, is that I almost always start from sort of building this person. This person may be named Jason Keith, and may the person has this sort of job, and this is what he does on a day-to-day basis, and this is where he gets his information, and that sort of thing. And it's a little bit of personal kind of person stuff in there, as well as that professional mix. So what do you do to sort of, what are the pieces that you bring together to bring those personas to life beyond what you've already discussed?
Yeah, we've done a little bit of highly refined stuff when we started our online product development, and we developed a couple personas that we got really detailed with, what their titles were at their company, what type of company it was, how big the company was, what their fears are, what their daily annoyances are, those are the types of things that are really useful, I think. Personal stuff, for us, it comes down to, across all our personas, most of the people are just highly passionate about digital, right? Highly passionate about the internet, highly passionate about social media, and that's why they work in social media for the most part. So a lot of them are content creators. A lot of it really, for ours specifically, a lot of it bleeds over personal and professional, so we can kind of just focus on professional because we know a lot of the motivations and pains for our customers. I was our customer for a couple of years. I talked to these customers at our conferences in detail. My business partner, Corey Creed, who works for an SEO company down in Charlotte, he's really great. One of his favorite task at our conferences is just walking up to people that aren't talking to anyone and finding out who they are, how they found out about Social Fresh, what they do in their daily lives in social media marketing. And those conversations are really good for us. And we learn a lot by really just talking to people in person. I'll get on the phone with people sometimes. I find, today our personas are less refined, but I know more about people. I'm kind of internalizing a lot of it, I guess, which we could argue if that's good or not. But I'm focused on having these conversations with people, and I think that's where I learn the most stuff. We do pull. I think Facebook ads are probably one of the biggest things that I learn a lot about how we're doing in our success. But I think the second thing, and it might be even more powerful, is these types of conversations, is actually getting on the phone with people, talking to them at our events, and just talking about their professional and personal lives, and how that's impacted by companies like ours, by companies that are marketing software companies, by our potential speakers, etc.
Anything you want to add to that, Adam? Actually, one of the things I was going to ask you, just maybe summarize, because I know you did a post recently on kind of a process, and just kind of recap what we've said to that post about to go in and start with an idea who your audience is. You guys use some of your ticket data.
Yeah.
You talked about Corey going out and just talking to people who attended the events, but do at least some kind of kitchen cabinet, kind of mother-in-law research, if you will, and use your best guess. And then you guys take that information, kind of put it together, and then try to develop a call to action or a digital asset, and try to test out some series of ads around that asset to the people you think, and refine that process to identify your real personas more deeply. Is that about right?
Yeah, I think that's perfect. You look at people have written book titles and tried to figure out what the best book title is by testing it through Google AdWords, right? We have that great example. The same thing works for Facebook ads. So you make these assumptions. Feel free to make a few intelligent guesses and then test them with advertising. I think that's great. And you build a product, whether it's an ebook or a webinar or an event in your local town if you're a local event company, or whether it's an ebook based on your physical product that's free to download, and you test titles of that ebook, you test titles of that event, you test what's the purpose of this event, what's the real call to action for people, and you make assumptions that'll teach you something about the customers that click on that link or give you that email or buy that product. And if you can learn something when they make that action, then you're going to learn something en masse when 10 people make an action over here and 3 people over here, and you can.
Those are the trends you talked about, right?
You can do those tests every week, right? You can do them every month. You can do them once a year. It just depends on what your customer base is, how big it is, how broad it is. But it's about, it's a scientific method at the end of the day. You're making assumptions, you're making guesses, and then you're testing it to see what happens.
Well, fantastic. I appreciate that an awful lot. We're going to move to the other part of our show where we actually do things that we found interesting this week.
Excellent.
Do you have something you want to share, either of you guys? Kick it off.
I'd want to know if there's anything on Jason's mind. Is there anything that you saw interesting this week?
Well, you know what? HubSpot, I was lucky enough to be invited, and they flew me out to Boston last week. And full disclosure, they're not currently a sponsor, but they're one of our oldest sponsors for our events. And we're usually doing some type of business with them. But and we don't use them personally yet, but I imagine in the next year or two we probably are going to use them for email, for marketing automation, and some other things, because I'm really excited about where their product is going. And they basically released, and we're going to release to the public next month, the first kind of really intelligent social CRM connection. So you're going to be able to start doing lead scoring and email marketing linked directly to social media activity. Right now I think it's just Twitter, and they're going to expand it, but basically you could do searches from within HubSpot on your customers to see who's talking about Facebook advertising, right? And then I could actually email all the people in our database that are talking about Facebook advertising on Twitter and send them, hey, we're doing a Facebook advertising conference online next month. If you're interested in it, FYI, this is what's going to happen. And it allows you to start to pull in some of that social media data and connect it better to your CRM, connect it better to your email. And one of the easiest ways I've seen it actually work. So if you're using HubSpot, that's going to be really exciting. I'm playing around with it just because I find it very useful. And I think HubSpot is really going to start surpassing some of these companies. We use Infusionsoft for a lot of these things right now. Marketo, Eloqua, Pardot are all out there getting bought mostly, doing some interesting things. But I think HubSpot's going to surpass them all within the next year or two.
Wow.
Yeah, those are smart guys. I love Mike Volpe. Those guys are just awesome over at HubSpot.
Yeah, they're great friends of Social Fresh, and I think it's really exciting what they're building. I mean, I'm looking forward to really diving into it in a professional way.
Do you think that they have the potential to fill in a gap that some of the other companies are not doing a great job of so far?
Yeah, I mean, here's the thing: marketing software in general is, it's kind of like the old democracy quote: "Democracy is the worst form of government that we have, except there's nothing better out there," right? A lot of marketing software is the best we have. There's a lot of pain points from email marketing to marketing automation. There's a lot of learning curve, and they've done the best job, I think, about fixing those things, about reducing the learning curve, about reducing the pain points, about making it more of, like they say, the easy button marketing software, and simplifying a lot of things. I love Infusionsoft. I can dive into Infusionsoft and do this visual editing of if-then statements for email, automated email stuff, email trees, email chains, whatever you want to call them. But it's incredibly difficult to learn. And I don't know if HubSpot's better, but it's different, right? And it's going to be really good for people that don't want to spend 3 months getting acclimated to software. And they're doing better and better at it all the time.
Cool. Actually, my share for this week is I had a chance to talk with Jeremiah Oyang last week, and he's launched a new series of blog posts on a new concept he's worked out, and it's called the collaborative economy. And he's got a lot of really good evidence, I think, for it. And he talks about things like even things like Zipcar, the ability to share one item amongst a lot of people. And people who are actually now brokering things like Airbnb, where people can rent out their own apartments. There's a new thing, I forgot the name of it, but you can actually park your car for free at the San Francisco airport, and they basically do fully insured, and they'll rent your car out while you're traveling. And so there's a lot more of that. And he says that this is really kind of the next level of disruption technology for companies. And so it's an interesting series of articles. We'll include the link in the post. It's worth reading. It's something that's kind of futuristic, but it's happening right now too. There's a lot of these things where there's one of the things that Jeremiah cited was the ability to, there's this one thing called the dress club or something like that, and they basically, people who live in areas, women or whatever, will share their dresses, so they always have new dresses in their closet, and so there's more and more of this kind of stuff happening, and it's an interesting shift, and to this a way that's kind of one car, if used correctly, it can be used, I saw the number on it, can replace 12 new purchased vehicles. Yeah. And so, I mean, it's pretty impressive data. And I know that Alamo, I think, just bought a Zipcar, which was interesting. And so there's a lot of that kind of movement. So most companies, when we were talking, because Jeremiah was nice enough to call and brief me on this, and one of the things that I thought about was how it made me think of The Innovator's Dilemma, which is a great book. It's been around for about 20 years now. And one of the things they talk about in the book is they talk about how companies get so entrenched in the way of doing business. And one of the examples in this the book was actually like IBM. And IBM kept making larger and larger and larger hard drives, huge hard drives, because that's where their head was at. So these little 5 1/4 hard drives were like nothing. They were cheap, they were cheesy, there were no competition, and they ignored it. And while they're ignoring it, making these huge hard drives, physically large hard drives, these little things got cheaper and faster and better, and basically ate their lunch. Yeah. In the hard drive space. We saw that, gosh, about 20 years ago, where just really a lot of hard drive manufacturers just really took over the place. So it's worth checking out and figuring out how you stay involved in this new economy with your business. And Jeremiah's couple of the things he suggests is you can do a couple of things. You can actually then create a situation where people either want to keep your product because you have great customer service and you give it to people who hold on to it, or actually become a person who resells your own product, or creates an environment that then takes a piece of the action where you facilitate people selling directly to each other. So there are a lot of ways companies can participate in it, and it's worth considering. So it's It's something that every business leader should think about.
Yeah, if you look at
Sort
I use a lot of these companies in New York simply because we don't have any room to own anything. But we use Hertz On Demand a lot, and the reason I use Hertz On Demand because besides Zipcar, and Hertz On Demand is basically Hertz copying Zipcar, which is smart on their part, is because it's cheaper. And I mean, I have to assume that Hertz is losing money on Hertz On Demand, but they are, getting to be in as many places and cheaper, and oftentimes better cars and better service than Zipcar. And it's interesting to see them compete. Enterprise is doing the same thing now, I think, and they have these huge, inventories of cars that they can just roll out and change over. So it's interesting to see companies try to compete with that. I think Hertz has done a good job. And these companies pop up like every day where they're sharing shoes or clothing or cars, or the car one is the big one, I think. There's all kinds of taxi services and Halo and
Exactly,
all kinds of Uber and competitors that are coming out. It's very interesting to watch, and it's fascinating. And if you're not thinking about it, you're going to either lose to it or be forced to back something to compete with these companies soon.
I think that the Uber and the other one just got a cease and desist order in New York, didn't they?
They, I think, are through that now. They had a cease and desist for actually using Uber for taxi cabs. And I think they've actually renegotiated with the city. And the city's actually been good about it. The only thing the city's done is try to slow down the companies a little bit because companies are moving so fast.
Right.
But they've actually started incorporating a lot of these companies like Halo and Uber, and there's half a dozen others, into the New York City transit system. And it's very interesting. Uber's great. I mean, it's expensive, but it's great for a lot of people that can't afford it. And there's all kinds of different other ones that are trying to come in and take that same customer base. I think New York and San Francisco are seeing a lot of it.
Yeah, I actually do this for Adam. Whenever he needs a ride, I just show up and he gives me like $5, and so I drive him around all day. So I'm doing it myself too.
Well, speaking of the topic you're talking about there, Steve, there's a movie. There's one I haven't seen, but it's supposed to be so. There's one on Netflix called Zeitgeist, and there's a whole series of them. But there's one particular one where it's talking about all the bad stuff with the economy and then how things will evolve to sort of help and solve a lot of things. And one whole segment of the movie, which is quite long, is talking about this individual, and I wish I knew his name offhand. I was trying to look it up while you guys were talking, but he is sort of the futurist in regards to how cities are designed and how they're designed in a way to be efficient in regards to resources that they share and all that sort of thing. And part of it had to do with, for instance, with a camera. If somebody wanted to use a camera, there could be community cameras where you don't use a camera 24 hours a day every single day, but if you wanted to, you could use a camera or a bike or, like you guys are saying, a car from somebody. So there would be sort of, in a way, community property for things that, again, maybe like a lawnmower. I mean, I think a lot of people probably within their neighborhoods do treat lawnmowers as community property sometime and don't get it back once they let it be borrowed by somebody. But that whole premise that you're talking about there, and that it seems like Jeremiah is alluding to, is very much covered in that segment. But there's a full movie I have yet to see, so I don't know if they go into the same depth. That's the same guy essentially talking about the city of the future. I think it's like Future by Design or Future City.
I think that's Future by Design is the right title, but
yeah. So it's really, really interesting, and I think even Jeremiah should take a look at that. I'll just sort of cap the end of the show here with my share is, I think that people often, at least in the past, would look at conferences, specifically developer-related conferences over the last, say, 3 or 4 years, as being really just sort of geeky, not things that you should pay attention to unless you're a developer or unless for whatever reason you get off on, hearing about APIs and that sort of thing. But in my mind, I actually think marketers and sort of the technologists of companies really need to be paying attention to every single time that there's one of these conferences out there, whether it be WWDC for Apple or otherwise, and again, Facebook. I mean, these guys are really talking about the future and the present and the building blocks that they're providing their community. So I had an opportunity to watch almost every minute of the 3-hour presentation at the beginning of the Google I/O conference this week. And I personally think it was pretty stinking amazing. I think that that the different things that they brought up in the different areas, they talked about, of course, their devices. They talked about what they were doing with their applications. Of course, anyone who uses, say, Google Plus, for instance, will see that there's a large slew of updates both in Google Plus and sort of their related products. But one of the things that stood out to me the most in regards to sort of taking a peek into the future was their discussion about the mobile web. They are, with the Chrome browser and what they're doing in conjunction with other companies, they are putting a stake in the ground and making the mobile web a thing of the future. And when I say that, it sounds really awkward because we've had the web for a long, long time. But they're taking a look at solving the problem of, for instance, browsers eating too much bandwidth, image formats being too heavy for people to download, especially folks that have that live in low bandwidth environments or live out in remote areas of the world. Their new video format that they're trying to push, that was taking one video and crunching it down to about the third of the size. If you look at what they were doing and sort of they're shifting this experience from being sort of reliant on apps to be now extremely possible on the web. And the difference is actually profound when you think about platforms not necessarily relying on people having to go to an app store, and actually that's a pretty deep, high hurdle to force consumers to go over if you have experiences that you want to share in relation to a campaign or to a product that you're selling or something, to actually get them to download an application and have it sort of take up space on their device. And so one quick example of what they had as an experience was for the second Hobbit movie, they actually had a full sort of game where you fight trolls as a hobbit in really good looking graphics and everything, directly in the browser, and they were showing it simultaneously on a mobile device, on the mobile web, and on a desktop in the browser, and your ability to use it, both obviously with swipe and with your mouse. So in any case, they're showing things that are not yet being utilized because apps are the way to go, because they're faster and more reliable and download a lot of the assets directly onto your device. But I think it's going to be pretty amazing, and I think people need to pay more attention to these developer conferences to really see if they want to be future forward, or if they want to be laggards and be sort of trailing behind what everybody else is doing, then they can just sort of react to what happens in the industry as it happens.
So let me ask you guys really quick. Let's go out. Yes or no? Everyone's been looking at the...
No.
Well, let me ask you the whole question.
Oh, sorry.
So there's been this kind of report about the demise of Google Plus. Yes or no?
No.
No?
These guys, this is, if you were to watch the conference, you'd know, people are hating, I think, on Google Plus more than you think.
Yeah.
And I think that Google has cash. They have cash to invest in this. So they're willing to let it bleed. They have the world's largest search engine, too. Yeah. If you see this, if you go back and watch what they talked about with all the different things, and then listen to Larry Page, who has this vocal cord paralysis. So this guy hasn't been on stage talking for years, and he was up on stage at the end. I'll tell you, I saw the first sort of flecks of brilliance that I used to think of when I saw Steve Jobs speak. I'm just saying. And I'm a huge Apple fan. If you listen to what he said,
I know you are.
If you listen to what he said, it almost had me going out and buying an Android device because I wanted to.
As well, you should.
And so, anyways, I think you can pay attention to that stuff. And
so, Jason, did you say yay or nay on Google Plus?
I will say no on the demise of Google Plus. Although I think people are saying no to the stream in Google Plus, like plus.google.com, right? I think that's what they're saying no to. And I think Google hasn't even gotten started when it comes to actually pushing. I mean, there's not even an easy way to get to Google Plus for most Android users that makes sense yet. And I think once they start pushing that mobile gap, like you were talking about, Adam, I think once they start actually going in that direction, we'll see some even more interesting things. And even today, it's pretty significant for businesses if they're using it in the right way.
I think you guys are on target because you guys agree with me. So, hey, so Jason, we so appreciate you joining the show today. Could you tell us on the website, the Friday Hangout, some information about where they can find you? But why don't you tell people who are listening and viewing where they can come find you and check you out and learn more about Social Fresh?
Yeah, socialfresh.com. Our conferences are at socialfreshconference.com, and you can find me on Twitter at Jason Keith, Keath.
And I bet nobody misspells your name all the time.
All the time.
And Adam, where can people find out more about you, buddy?
Just Secret Sushi, anywhere you find Secret Sushi. So at Secret Sushi on Twitter, secretsushi.com, and just Google Adam Hellway, and hopefully you don't find anything bad about me.
And I'm Steve Farnsworth. You can find me at Steveology on Twitter and the Steveology blog. So listen, everybody, thank you so much. Have a great week. Have a great weekend.